Coming up today on The Story.
I thought by myself, when I get married, I want a Christian school to educate my children, and a lot of our friends thought the same, and we started to make that a project, which of course was not all that easy because we were all poor people starting with nothing. But the comical thing was that I only had primary education, so wasn't trained in anything.
The Story.
G'day, I'm Jimmy Colefax. Welcome to The Story. Well, Keith Greenwood immigrated to Australia from Holland in 1950 when he was only 14 years old. After finishing primary school, he went to work on a farm to help his family financially, and farming went on to become his primary occupation. But his life's work was much more than that. Throughout his life, he always followed what he was taught as a child in Sunday school class, that every part of life is for serving God. The result has been that he's helped start several ministries that have impacted thousands of people both here in Australia and in India. We're going to hear Keith Greenwood's inspiring story today as he has a chat with Eric Scatterbo.
Keith Greenwood, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Glad to have you with us. And let's go back to your early years growing up in Holland. What was that like during the war?
During the wartime, yeah. Well, until 1945, when the war ended. So my early years, I was brought up in Holland during the war. Although we were one of the more blessed ones, we've never really had anything major happen to our family or close family. But being brought up in a wartime is not easy. And so we had to fight, if you like, to keep life going and to meet the needs of a family. So wartime was not the ideal situation to being brought up as a young person. So when the war ended, that was certainly one of the great joys in our life when we were finally free. But the economy was shot in Holland, and my father had 6 children, and he did not think that Holland was the right place to bring up his family, and he decided to migrate to Australia. So when we were 13, 14 years old, we migrated by ship to Australia and started life again with a family of 6, start from scratch, which was also a lot of tension in our lives to make things meet and to get started and to learn a language.
Yeah, so you didn't know any English at that point?
No, I didn't know any English. Father, mother, that's about all I knew.
Yeah.
And I was just about finished primary school. I finished primary school the first year I was there, and I did some work on one of the farms here in Sylvan, and I started to love growing things. So when I was 14, I stopped school, primary school, and started working on one of the farms and helped the family financially, and fell in love growing flowers and fruit until later in life, about 18, when I started some concreting work somewhere and worked for myself in partnership with a few other people. We worked on a farm.
Now, I want to go back to your childhood. You were taught in church that everything was for serving God. Is that right?
That's correct. That's one of the emphasis which was made very clear in my upbringing, yes.
And when did you become a Christian?
Well, I can't remember not being a Christian.
So you always had faith?
Always had faith. And I remember even during the war times, I must have been about 6, when we would have a bombing raid, and the sirens would always go, which meant that all the people needed to get off the streets inside. That I was on the other side of the city, too far from home, and me and a small friend of mine, and we didn't know what to do, so we knelt on the marketplace and asked God to help us in this situation. And as soon as we said amen, my grandfather walked around the corner, and that was just a common thing, go to God with our needs and see him answer.
Yeah.
But of course, it became more real as I grew up, but I can never remember a time where I would doubt that God was there and that we belonged to him.
And then when you came to Australia, naturally, one of the things that the Dutch community wanted to do was start a church. Is that right?
That's correct. We were sort of indoctrinated a little bit in the type of church we were brought up in, and we felt that was one of the things we were missing. So our parents decided that we should start a Reformed church in Australia, which wasn't all that difficult because in those days, many Dutch families came in our area, and it wasn't all that long before we had a few hundred people wanting similar things.
So you weren't alone being a Dutch family in the outer eastern suburbs of Melbourne.
We were one of the early ones, but every few months you would see another family come, and because there were many people in the same situation we were in Holland, scattered through wartime and no work and no future.
So you helped to start a Dutch Reformed church in the Mount Evelyn area?
Yes, correct.
And then also you helped start a school.
Yeah, after a little time, we were here. The school problems started to arise, and I thought by myself too, but when I get married, I want a Christian school to educate my children. And a lot of our friends thought the same. And we started to make that a project, started to get people interested in it and start to contribute to it, which of course was not all that easy because we were all poor people starting with nothing.
Yeah.
But still, we started, and slowly on, we raised enough funds to put down a deposit for a block of land in Mount Evelyn.
And that was back in the 1970s, and I'm very thankful that you and your friends did that, starting Mount Evelyn Christian School.
Yes.
Because that's where my children went to when we came to Australia. And later I was on the board of the school when it had its 40th anniversary, and I got to see all the pictures of you and your friends starting the school, starting construction and everything. So it's quite a wonderful heritage that you have there, and it's still going strong to this day.
But the comical thing was that I only had primary education, so wasn't trained in anything. And it's just finding your way with something you weren't trained in.
Wow.
But you saw the importance of it, and you wanted to see it happen.
Yeah, so here you didn't have a full 12 years of education, but yet you helped start a school, and two of your sons became educators.
Yeah, both my sons are principals of Christian schools,
Wow. So you started something beyond what you could do, and it's blossomed into something very beautiful.
Yeah, that's been one of wonderful, fruitful ministries that grew out of that.
Amen. Now, getting back to your life story.
Yes.
After being involved in helping to start a church and then a school, you wanted to marry a Christian young lady.
Yeah, sure. Well, in those days, being brought up in a fairly rigid Christian environment, I wanted to make sure that I would find a Christian girl. And being a stranger in this country wasn't a very easy place to find such a girl. And when a new family from Holland would come in, all boys my age, we kept an eye on whether there were any girls in those families, which happened in my case when a family came which had 5 girls in the family. And when I went there to just meet that family and say hello, I met Helen. And we just fell in love, and a couple of years later got married at the age of 21.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been married over 60 years now.
Over 60 years.
And God gave us 3 wonderful children.
Mm-hmm.
The third was a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And she married a farmer in Gippsland.
Mm-hmm.
And later on they moved to Broome. And they bought a property with some bed and breakfast units on there. And but the tragic thing was that he died early this year with an accident.
I'm sorry to hear that.
You're listening to The Story. Our guest today is Keith Greenwood, who emigrated to Australia from Holland in 1950 when he was only 14 years old. He's sharing the remarkable story of how a farmer with only a primary school education was able to help start several ministries that have impacted thousands of people's lives, both here in Australia and in India. We'll hear more of Keith's life journey when we return.
The Story.